Welcome everyone to 52 Living Ideas. Tonight is the Future of Leadership with Jeff Nugent, and we'll be covering a book by Jacob Morgan. He's a futurist and he's interviewed over 140 CEOs. So I'm actually really looking forward to this particular session. This has been a fantastic series thus far. And Jeff, take it away.
Hi, everyone. So really glad to have you here with us. And it's actually kind of nice that it's a group that we can just kind of stay together here and talk about some of these things. And I hope we can have at least as much fun doing it as we did, before we began. So we should try to consider, how we can continue in that spirit. But it really is wonderful to see you. So I in preparing for this session this evening, I realized I'd made a really fundamental mistake in that I advertised it before I had prepared for it. and preparing for it turned out to be a lot harder than I would have imagined it could have been. But it's for a very good reason, because Jacob Morgan has written a really great book. And in times past with folks from around the world, I would buy the book and hire authors to do what they'd written their book on, and I would sort of help them design it and run it, and then sometimes I would help them teach it. And I would have gladly bought Jacob's book for all of you if I could have gotten him to make this presentation. I finally discovered that there was a wonderful interview that he did for the Duke University Continuing Education Department, where they allowed him to actually put some of this online. And so I'm going to be working from that in this session. And I've read the book, so I can talk about it, but they condensed it in a wonderful way. And I really, really appreciated that. I called Joe today and said, I'm not sure what to do with this, Joe. This is too much. I thought I'd be able to condense these things myself. So kudos to Duke University for doing this for me. And what it will allow us to do, I'll do these kind of summaries of the various sections of the book, and then we'll have a chance to just talk about it. What strikes us, what resonates with us, what comments we would make, what questions we would have, or who knows, maybe even criticisms of his points of view. But so with all that in mind, I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. So I think you all are probably getting used to my big whiteboard, which I miss the ability to actually use and look forward to using again someday. But we're going to take this is what we're going to do in this time is we'll just do a quick review of a couple of things and then jump right in to this book, The Future Leader by Jacob Morgan. And he has in it what he calls the notable 9, 4 mindsets and 5 skills that he thinks and are quite remarkably researched are necessary for leaders to be successful. And he really means people in very senior positions overseeing and leading and guiding, modeling the way for large companies and institutions. And it's fascinating to see his orientation to that, given all that he learned. And then, spurred by Laura's excellent question in our last time together, what is empathy? And actually spurred me to, okay, I don't think I have as good an answer for that as I would like to have. And so I started researching it and found this one article in particular that is, I think, very thoughtful. Jacob Morgan actually just the other day posted something on LinkedIn with regard to empathy as well. And I should say, Jacob Morgan, if you connect with him on LinkedIn, he offers. Oh, we have a little echo there.
Yep. Yeah, I got it.
Good. If you connect up with Jacob Morgan on LinkedIn, he provides all kinds of resources regarding the future of work and the future of leadership. And he's a really very thoughtful person who fully researches the kinds of things that he presents, but he presents them several times a week, and I'm very impressed with him. So as somebody who's been studying this for over 3 decades, to find somebody that is that great a resource is a wonderful thing. Okay, so remember, this is our sort of guiding question in the purpose for this program, that in this complex and fast-changing environment, how can mature leadership help us to authentically and ethically and inclusively, creatively, and productively, because Lord knows there's a lot to do, keep moving forward together? And the authentically, each of these things really relates to people as individuals, as well as all of us together. And all of us together adds this difficult dimension, or this extra dimension to it. But we're going to explore this again, with the grounding of kind of considering this within a civil society and beyond the current politics or issues of the day. But we'll look at these things as freshly as we can, and then compare them, I think, to our experience. We'll be discovering and considering these ideas, and curiosity and respect for diverse perspectives will reign. And we'll definitely prize the best questions we can bring to the conversation. So if you recall, this is my kind of working diagram that I've been using with a bunch of people lately, where individuals and those who are in any kind of a leadership role, and I believe everybody can and should be in a leadership role, either positionally or time to time situationally, within whatever group or team or organization or company or community we're in, that we have a journey with ourselves, and then we have a journey with each other. Somebody said to me yesterday, they said, "Do you mean sort of like pretend that the other person that you're talking with is the only other person on the planet?" I said, well, that's kind of an interesting thought. That would definitely add a measure of respect to the process. If that was true, then I wouldn't want that person as an enemy, and I certainly would want them as a friend, and I'd want to stay in touch, and I think I'd figure out how to be as conversationally intelligent as I could possibly be in order to not only create the highest quality relationship we could possibly have, but also figure out what we're going to do, given the interdependencies and the decisions and the actions and what we choose to learn based upon what happens from what we do. And then in the center here of whatever endeavor we're in, whether it's a team of folks at a company or in an organization or within a government entity or philanthropy. I work a fair amount with people in private foundations, whether it's a sports team or the military or whatever it is, the folks on a trip to the moon, that there's a vision for what it is that we're trying to create, the experience, the broader inspiring sense of what we want to be a part of and what we'd like to help make to happen. And then there's what it is that we're trying to achieve and why, very specifically, which is kind of contained within a mission, but very specifically, what is our our theory, if you will, regarding if we can achieve these very specific things, they will generate for us some benefits and some experiences. And can we do that in a way that is perfectly, completely aligned with our values and principles in order to guide the way. And really, in these times, and especially in considering leadership, I would say that a solid expression of values and principles is how can we achieve what we want to achieve, taking individual responsibility and being authentic as individuals, and being the same way in relationship with each other, being authentic and taking responsibility together, where we put people first. That's really a great statement of the core principles for anybody who wants to be in any kind of a leadership role with regard to any endeavor. And the role of everyone in this, that I'm now more convinced than ever is central, is to be a steward of the assets of this entity and ourselves and each other, whatever we can do as stewards of the assets to contribute to achieving this vision and the tangible things we're trying to achieve and what we hope to gain from it as we consistently seek to put people first. So there's a lot more to this in terms of how we actually lead ourselves and who we can be with each other and how we make decisions, but that's enough for now. So this is Jacob Morgan's book, and I just want to put it out there because I really highly recommend it. And I have a big library of books, but I'm really happy that I bought this one. And so it's about 15, 16 bucks on Amazon or wherever you buy books. So Jacob Morgan asked the question, what will it take to succeed in the next decade? And he said, listen, a lot of the conversations about leadership are focused on either the past or maybe the present, but really, as best we can look forward, which is actually one of the definitions of leadership, the ability to look forward and imagine and envision based upon values and principles, what it is that we'd like to create for the future, and to imagine and evaluate ways of getting there together that are consistent with our highest values. So remarkably enough, he interviewed 140 CEOs of companies around the world and partnered with LinkedIn to survey more than 14,000 people around the world. And by the time you do that, after a while, you get a pretty good sense of what people are thinking and maybe what they have in common. And that's where he came up with these particular mindsets and skills. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through, first of all, the mindsets briefly, and then we're going to get to talk with each other about that, what we think about it, what questions we have. And then we're going to go through the skills briefly and talk a little bit about those skills and what we might add or what we think of those. And then we're going to address the subject of empathy based upon the article that I sent out to you. And I don't know if anybody had the time or took the opportunity to do the survey that Jacob Morgan offered, this kind of self-diagnostic. Was anybody able to get to that just for fun?
I was, yeah. I did I ended up taking it.
Yeah, it doesn't take very long.
No, it doesn't. It's an excellent survey. It's well worth it. The 20 minutes.
It's pretty quick. Yeah, it's pretty quick and it's free. So you might even find it intriguing when we're done here, if you didn't get a chance to do it before.
Jeff?
Yes,
Jeff.
it's posted. It's posted right on the announcement.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry about that. I didn't see. Okay.
Oh, no problem.
Absolutely. There's a link right there.
Okay.
I can put a link in the chat as well.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
And he's offering that for free because he's marketing a longer program, but it doesn't cost anything to do the survey. And I found it intriguing for myself and have recommended it to a lot of people. So in the book, he presents what he calls the notable 9. And he presents it as what leaders will need to develop to be successful in the next decade and beyond. And so I think we're in the first year since he wrote the book. And technically it would be the next 9 years. Just kidding. So the mindsets are, first of all, the explorer. Now, kind of quickly, you know, the kind of like, as he puts it, explorers of old, you know, who ventured into new lands. The future leaders really need to bring all of their stakeholders, their employees, everyone who is engaged with an organization or an entity, need to bring this explorer orientation, because the future is really uncharted. It's almost a little bit hard to know exactly where we're going, although we have kind of a growing vision for it, and maybe are more able to envision it. But really, from everything related to you know, rebuilding economies, to rebuilding public health, to rebuilding political and government systems, and then even, you know, for so many who are going back into work, just when they gotten used to virtual work, the hybrid decision here and how it's managed, so many things to be navigated along with as we rebuild here, envisioning fair and just outcomes and systems in every respect. So his point was that explorers are curious. They're open to new ideas, and they're agile enough to change directions. In fact, they expect they're going to be changing directions when the original plan hits a roadblock, which many of our plans even so far certainly have. And this mindset really forces the pursuit of new ideas and services and products and methods and ways of doing things. It means becoming a perpetual learner, really like that. I was talking with somebody the other day who said that they had heard a person characterize the learner for the leader for the future would do well to characterize themselves rather than a manager and certainly a supervisor, or even a leader in kind of a directive role, even with regard to establishing the vision, that leaders might be better. We all might be better if those of us who consider ourselves at any point as serving in a leadership role to be learning partners. I really like that phrase, to consider ourselves to be learning partners, because that I think it's a great position, and really kind of motivates us to keep learning as fast as we can. Joanne Jenkins, the chief executive of AARP, told Jacob that future leaders must instill a learning culture in their organizations, and this time really mean it, rather than just kind of as talk about it, that we really need to create learning cultures. Organizations that are not continually learning and adapting will lose their competitive edge and ultimately will not survive. For future leaders, this type of perpetual learning is as essential as air and water. And you know, this orientation that this model that Shrikant has shared with us regarding the OODA loop from John Boyd and how we might actually expand that to use in a variety of different ways. I think the ability to observe situations dispassionately and then orient ourselves to, okay, well, what do we want? What is our vision? And what are the various ways that we might be able to get it? And then relate to each other and assume that we're in a dynamic, changing situation where we're really forcing ourselves to learn as much as we can and try things out. I just think it's a great model. Jacob goes into in the book he talks about the explorer having a growth mindset, realizing that where we are now is not where we'll always be, and that we see challenges as opportunities, constant opportunities to learn and progress. So the next of the four mindsets is the chef. And his point about great chefs is that they're expert at balancing ingredients to create perfectly flavored dishes. That leaders of the future need to balance two of the most important ingredients in any business: humanity and technology. And he calls it human IT, human ET, which I think is fascinating, because I think that given all that we're learning here with regard to the digital age, that the balance and the integration between who we are as people and the meaning that we are seeking and making, and the things that we want to achieve with each other and with all other living beings is essential to keep in mind as we're also being maybe not yet taken over, but certainly dramatically influenced by the speed at which technology is developing. And sorry, I forgot to turn my phone off. So the human side of all work, is definitely there with all endeavors that are looking at the changing nature of work. And it's really where the consideration of the employee experience and our relationships with each other, cultivating loyal customers, and certainly the social impact that we wish to achieve. It all comes into this of things that need ingredients that need to be in this, and the ability to combine them rather than making decisions only considering one ingredient is a really core ability now. So of course, efficiency and productivity and speed and decision making happen, as effectively and efficiently as possible. But the ability to combine all these bottom lines, these multi-bottom lines, in many cases 3, 4, 5, 6 bottom lines, and hold them is key. So next is what he calls the servant. And, he said that, for years that leaders have given instructions from the top of hierarchical pyramids. And really the success of all leaders in the future will be on the ground, working with folks in the trenches and lifting people up. That the mindset, the servant mindset, really manifests in 4 ways, including service to those that we are depending upon and potentially following. So to other leaders, so managing up, if you will, in our relationships, as well as building strong relationships with a board of directors, with investors, with shareholders, with other stakeholders. And it also means working in strong partnership with folks, a little bit like the service chapter within the design way, that is less about helping and more about partnering with each other to co-create things, not just rely on one person to create them for us, but we are servants in a sort of a mutually responsible partnership with each other, which I think is going to be essential in more and more ways going forward. It said that part of being a servant is celebrating when folks around us that we have engaged in helping to develop become more successful than us, and we just recognize people's work and make them feel valued and engaged. That's often essential. But he says it needs to be balanced with service to ourselves, that we need to take care of ourselves in order to be able to serve others. And if we do not take care of ourselves, if we do not serve ourselves as well, we won't be there to do the things with others that we wish to make happen or co-create. So the next one is to be a global citizen, the mindset that that as the world, the entire world becomes more connected, and really every company becomes a global company with the potential for customers and employees and around the world, that to succeed in the future, that leaders must adopt this mindset of being a global citizen, not just a global entity selling stuff to people, but really truly a global citizen with matching responsibility, with corporate social responsibility, as well as certainly partnering responsibility for minimizing and hopefully reversing climate change. That it comes down to this, could you still lead effectively if you were plucked from your current situation and placed in a new country, culture, or department? We want to gain such understanding of other places and cultures and folks and governments and values and civil societies and others and more, that we really could relate to them as partners in every way. So he says it's not about traveling all the time. It's about having a global mindset and being open to other people and ideas, to respect the diversity of cultures and religions and ethnicities and races and thoughts and orientations. Just really everybody becomes multicultural and comfortable with differing cultures. So one of the things that that Jacob asks with regard to the mindsets as well as the skills, he said, okay, so how well are we doing? Because he was able to survey 14,000 people in LinkedIn, as well as these 140 CEOs. So he got the perspective of not just from the CEOs, but from those that they are supposed to be serving. So he said, these are 4 mindsets that regarding how leaders must think in the next decade and beyond. And his survey of 14,000 employees, the results, maybe to some of us will be surprising, others not. He said, most employees think that they are seeking to practice a number of these things. 69% saying that they are seeking to practice reasonably well or very well these mindsets. However, when asked about how well their managers and leaders are practicing these mindsets, 60% put their leaders in the categories of not well at all, or somewhat well. Now, obviously, what this shows is that often we judge ourselves by our intentions, and we judge others by what we to whom we attribute results that we may or may not be pleased about. But nonetheless, it's certainly true that today's leaders think they're doing a much better job than those they're serving do. And only 39% of the 14,000 individual contributors gave their managers the very well or reasonably well ratings. So, when it comes to our impact on others, whether we feel like we deserve it or not, perception is reality. And if leaders think they're doing a great job, but the others don't think so, there's definitely some work to be done. And there seems to be plenty of room for improvement there. So that's a kind of a basic orientation to these 4 mindsets. The explorer, given the pace of change and openness to new ideas and ways of thinking and engaging. The chef, the ability to combine many more things as criteria for decision making, as well as for culture, healthy culture and systems. The servant, really seeking to be supportive in a partnership role with others, and just constant global orientation to, we're on this world, we're in this world together, not just in our city or state or country even. And so my invitation to you all is to share, it would be great if each of you might just share one thing at least. What's one thing that seems important, or a comment you would make about this list, and any questions you have about mindsets per se. And then I think, why don't we start with these 4, and then let's extend it to things that maybe occur to us that we would add to it. Sound like a game plan?
Sounds great. We have Julie first, but folks feel free to either raise your virtual hand or type exclamation point in the chat to
Great.
answer Jeff's question, or if you have any comments or anything you would like to add. So why don't we let Julie, why don't you go ahead and get
Hi,
us
Julie.
started.
Okay, hi. My first thing I thought immediately upon hearing everything you just said is, why wouldn't, or maybe it's, maybe you are doing it, but the thing that strikes me is, why wouldn't we look at that 39% of the people that it is in sync and aligned and see what it is, that study why it's working?
Yeah. Well, I think I think that's what Jacob did, because he interviewed 140 people, and he was, he tried to take the best from them. So it's really where he got these ideas. He got these from folks that he thought were doing a pretty good job. But that's a great point.
Next up, we have Jody.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jyoti.
Long time no see. Sorry, I have not been attending because
Not at
now
all.
that this weather was good, I was walking until 7 o'clock. So I just didn't have the heart to come and start the program.
Great. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I always enjoy your presentations. I like all of them, to be very honest. And I just wanted to tell you that the lady I went out for lunch today, she asked me, what am I doing these days? So I happened to mention to her that tonight I'm doing this leadership on leadership. And she said, why do you need that? I said, that's a good question. Why do I need that?
That's a great question.
Right. So I said, I not necessarily because I want to be a leader, but I have noticed in the past, I have been forced into the situations where I have to take the leadership, asked or not asked. I've been, placed in those positions. So I think if everybody gets this kind of a orientation, then it's easier to handle that situation, leadership position. And what I feel that as a leader, it is incumbent on the leader to pull the people together. And I am in a community, in the neighborhood community, I think I told you in one of my breakout rooms. And I see that they have put me in that role where I have to monitor everybody's comments, and I have to make sure they are aligned with the community standard rules and what have you. Then slowly, luckily I'm anonymous, so they don't know who's doing this. People start alienating the leader because they feel that this leader is going by too many rules and regulations that the community doesn't need. How do you handle that kind of a situation where the leader is required, he or she is required to follow the rules? There are some standard rules set by the committee, that the rules are given to the leaders. And then when the people think that, oh, our responses are getting shuffled here and there, or they're being deleted, why bother with this leader? Why not just bypass?
Sure.
So that's my question.
I'd love to hear what other folks here together might offer. That's a great point. The sort of that, because I think it's a common thing that people who are in particular significant positions of responsibility may have constraints and expectations that have been kind of put, to them and maybe onto them. and they might not be quite as, transparent, or they might not feel like they can share them as openly as they might wish, or maybe it just doesn't occur to them. I don't know. But I think it's a common thing that people who are in responsible positions for challenging situations and teams and organizations and projects may have some things that they got to keep in mind that they might not be able to share with everybody. And I think it's one of the central challenges of that kind of responsibility. I know I did.
How did you handle it?
I retired. No, I'm just kidding. So, I actually sought to be as forthcoming as I possibly could. And, there were, I probably erred on the side of maybe too much of that. Like I'd walk into a staff meeting or into a leadership team meeting, and I put whiteboards on 3 walls, and I'd put everything up there, and everything regarding our financials, everything regarding our goals, everything regarding, we'd fill up that. When we were done with a staff meeting, we had 3 whiteboards that were full of everybody's ideas and thoughts, and that was always pleasing to me, even if I didn't agree necessarily. It was an opportunity to put it up there and have the chance to talk about it. And so that's the reason why I focus so much on the significance of productive disagreement, because I certainly invited it and tried to make the most of it. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But I would say on most of the hardest decisions that we had to make, I certainly knew what everybody thought, and they knew why I was making whatever decisions I was making if it was up to me to make them. And sometimes, we deferred to other people with more expertise or experience in the room than me, and just said, look, it's your call, go ahead, and we'll try it out. But, long story short, I was running an organization that really had no competition in the world. Our business model was so unique that nobody believed that we would even try it, and much less that we'd been able to sustain it for 3 decades. And so when you do strategic thinking or strategic planning, and you say, well, who are your competitors? There really weren't any, because nobody was foolish enough to try it. And so we, but then, ultimately after I left the organization, within several years, it came to an end. But that wasn't a surprise to anybody, because it was such a challenging thing to pull off to start with. And we always used to say to each other, well, if it doesn't work, in the next couple of years, we'll all just have to go get real jobs. But anyway, without violating any confidences, I can say all that.
Thank you.
Can you say,
Yeah.
Now,
what kind of company it was, Jeff?
It was a
Jeff?
nonprofit organization. Yeah, it was technically a nonprofit organization that was at once a consulting company, but also a leadership development, training, and coaching company that also was working with various major corporations and helping them structure their philanthropic giving. And so in the aggregate, we actually ultimately co-designed and co-managed programs that gave away over $200 million to arguably the best nonprofits in the United States. And what at the time, and I think still today, is the largest unrestricted grant program in the history of U.S. philanthropy. And so it was fun. It was amazing. It was an incredible opportunity. And then we offered various kinds of leadership programs for the executive directors and emerging leaders from these organizations around the country. And had over 21,000 people go through our leadership programs, 3/4 of whom were leaders of color and or women.
Mhm.
So it was an adventure. It was a grand adventure. And it brings me here to be able to enjoy doing this with you all.
Wow, aren't we lucky?
We are
I'm the lucky
indeed.
one.
Why don't you
We
find
are
some money
indeed.
for me, Jeff?
Hey, Laura.
I need a grant.
Okay. Well, really quickly, does anyone else have any comments on the 4 mindsets that Jeff has outlined for us? If not, I can go ahead and make a couple quick comments.
Great.
But
Joe knows that his comments are the only thing that's standing between me and me inflicting the skills on you next.
exactly. So I found that, again, all of them are really important. But the Explorer one actually was something of a particular interest to me, primarily because of what we do here at 52 Living Ideas. And I almost felt like it was kind of creating a culture of learning when I heard what you were saying about this, and basically having a reward system in place that would allow for that would actually encourage innovation, I think is also very important with when you have when you're trying to build a culture of learning. That's just some initial thoughts. But I also liked how I think it really related to one of the other ones, I believe the servant, in that it needed to be a level organization. You can't be hierarchical with a lot of bottlenecks in the process. And I think that that's really important as well. Having an organization where there's as little hierarchy as possible, and people are actually engaged with one another and actually doing the work. So that's just some comments that I have. And the last comment I'll just make really quickly is on the global citizen one. I really look at that as a fixed and growth mindset, and where you have a diverse group of people, and you're really kind of getting a multitude of ideas and perspectives on whatever you're doing, and that way you can actually start to really grow outside of your comfort zone versus actually just staying in this fixed mindset where you're talking to people that are of your same belief system, so to speak. So I think that that's a really important point. We've talked a lot about that here at 52 Living Ideas with fixed and growth mindsets and being open. And so that also feeds into the idea of the level organization as well. So those are just some of my comments based on what you talked about. But yeah, thank you. I mean, I think it's a fantastic model. And Jody would like to say something else.
Hey, Jody.
Yeah, actually, Joe, you made both the points, explorer and global, put together very well. What I was going to say was this global citizen. It is so very important to have that skill in you, leadership skill. Because when I used to travel a lot, I noticed that people are kind of, when you see them in different countries, they might be very vocal in their own country, but when they go out, they become reticent. They don't express themselves as good as they are used to doing that in their own country for the fear of difference of norms. They're afraid that maybe I'll speak too much and I will intimidate other people, or I will, they will feel threatened or whatever. So I noticed that whatever skills that I had, some of the skills that I had in leadership, Jeff, to me, I think they were genetic more than trained or environmental. Because I remember my parents saying, when I was very little, that she just takes over. I don't take over. Now, as I grew up, I started to realize you can't take over, but somebody needs to be a leader in the group. And that's what I used to do. So coming back to Global Citizen, I noticed when I used to travel and I used to take tours and what have you, if I didn't speak up, I didn't learn. I was like pushed back a little bit. And so that is very important when you are in a different place and with different people from different ethnic group. Just learn to assert yourself. And if you think that you are not being navigated, just become a leader for that particular situation. It helps everybody. That's the point I'm making. And I also like the explorer. And I think, Joe, you said it very well. What we do over here in 52 Ideas is basically the explorer.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? If we are leaders in our own way, we don't have to speak up. Everybody doesn't have to speak up, but they have to explore what they're learning, where they're going to take, and how they're going to take. So these two servants, they are all very good points. I like your presentation. Thank you.
So,
Laura,
no,
I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead, Laura. Yeah.
Please comment, or go ahead if you want to respond, Jeff.
No, go ahead, Laura.
Oh, I was wondering if the explorer, could you consider that also like the change maker, the change agent? Or no?
I think it is in a way.
Is
I think
it?
that it is.
Mm.
I think that that is, in the book, The Leadership Challenge, that we started off this series with,
Mhm.
they have these 5 practices of leadership, and they've done this across, 80 countries across 30 years and all that. And in their 5 practices, they were model the way, inspire a shared vision. See if I can remember all 5. Challenge the process, which was always interesting to me, which was really kind of about especially challenging assumptions. And then enable others to act. And last was encourage the heart. And it's also kind of an interesting combination of orientations here. But I think that Jyoti, you'll remember that the tagline to 52 Living Ideas was from Shrikant is a joint exploration of the world. And so I think there's a lot of that that's in here. Joe, what I wanted to say from, and the other thing, Jyoti, with regard to sort of leaders, being born or made, I'm sure there's an interaction somewhere in there between nature and nurture. But I actually do think that one of the major characteristic traits, if you will, of folks who are open to serving in leadership roles is a willingness to take responsibility. And it's one of the reasons why it's so disappointing when someone kind of gets appointed or installed in a leadership role and you're counting on them to take responsibility for the good of everyone, and then the person sort of fails in their ability to take care of them, to be responsible themselves personally. And I think it's just the dissonance there that really is shocking to us sometimes, because we assume that folks who are willing to take responsibility for making sure that all of our lives, are as successful and prosperous and healthy as possible, that person also has a sense of how they need to relate to themselves and take responsibility for their own behaviors. And so it's just such a shock when people don't. But Joe, I wanted to just say one thing with regard to your orientation. And you really reminded me of this, is that, I've probably had about at least 10,000 emerging leaders in very intensive leadership programs over the decades here. And many times they would say, this just seems so hard. Why would I want to do this? Why would I want to take on that level of responsibility? And what struck me about these 4 things is I think that they're very attractive. I think that they're very kind of inviting. Getting to explore is to some extent kind of a privilege and a pleasure, getting to combine ideas and diverse cultures and experiences and orientations and be learning and from all of those folks coming from all those different vantage points and combining things in complex endeavors. The chef, that's a fascinating challenge. Playing the role of the servant in supporting others and seeing them succeed is an incredibly rewarding thing to do. And the opportunity to be, or at least to seek to be, a global citizen, both in terms of mindset as well as experience, relationships, as well as exposure to and kind of tasting the culture all around the world. Those are phenomenal things to be invited into. And the extent to which we could characterize what it means to serve in a leadership role as including things that are this inviting and this attractive, it's probably a good idea rather than just, everyone's going to hate what you say and they're all going to attack you and you get blamed when everything goes wrong.
Right. No, I agree with that. No, I agree 100% with that. It is important to outline all the positive and wonderful things that can happen in that process.
I see Mike is here, his hand up, and then Laura. Mike?
Yep.
I'm trying to map what you said with what the world has been and map it into what you said about OODA loop and what you said about the design way. And a lot of how you interpret each of those, not change each of those quadrants. It depends on what the mission of the organization is, and your mission as a leader is. The servant is valid if you're at the bottom of if you're at McDonald's and your job is flipping hamburgers when they're done, that fits in how it's clear to see how you're the servant. And if you're the CFO in a company, your servant is the reality of the mission and the reality of of what the environment that you're in is. Now, if you're the CEO, in today's world, even a CEO often has a boss. Depending on what they call them, it might be if he is at the top, he still has a board of directors and a cast of customers, and the federal government, the state government, and a whole list of other people. So
and shareholders.
The shareholders are just going home and telling your wife how much you lost, that we're moving to the west side rather than the east side or whatever. So the issue is everybody has a boss, even if that boss is the reality of the environment that we're working in. And I'm thinking what happened to Polaroid and Kodak, which were at the top of and Xerox, which were at the top of their world. And didn't. The top thing is to the servant issue is dominates in my, and when I look at the list, and I glanced at the book too, if you don't, if not just the servant, but another attribute that's needed is resiliency. So I haven't put it all together in my mind, but this provides a framework.
You'll get some more to go on.
Now, one more thing about framework is we pick 4 major things, and we could say we can map the entire universe into 4 variables. Just like Einstein mapped the entire universe into the space-time continuum, or Jung mapped the universe into the whole universe into 4 or 7 or 3 archetypes. So I think it's a framework, and how where you sit in the environment is key. And I'd like to hear some comments on how that's different for at different levels of the chain and different types of businesses. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. You know, I'm definitely I would add resilience to this too. I think given the at least for me personally, you know, each time something has come along that was so far outside of my awareness or expectation, even, you know, vaguely thinking that here's, you know, we should be preparing for it. I've just been struck by the significance of resilience, and that it is a leadership role to model being able to, you know, just the agency and the efficacy and the authenticity and the vulnerability and the creative thinking and the trying out ways and see what happens and learn from it, and the psychological safety for an individual as well as for a group to be able to be creative and candid and try things out and then learn from them, even if it's just to discard them. That all of those things, you know, are all part of resiliency, and I think that's a really good nomination for a 5th mindset.
Yeah, now I know that we had a couple people with their hands up, but we're going to move on because we have 5 more skills we got to get to. I have a quick request for you. Could we stop sharing and then reshare really quickly, because one of our participants has lost vision of the slide. So
sure.
I believe it's at the top under view options.
Did that do it?
No. Let me see. I don't know if I actually can do it since you're the one sharing.
I think that the problem is, since all of us can see it, that person needs to refresh their buffers by logging out and logging back in.
Yeah, I think I can't even step out because there's no way for me to step out. So can you cancel me out and I can log in again?
Okay, sure. Absolutely. And then Jeff, you could just actually go.
Like I can't leave because there's not showing me anything.
Okay, sure. And then you just can come back, just hit the button and I'll let you back in right away.
We can see you, Ambika.
I know I'm here, but I clicked on something and
well, so hopefully she'll be back in a moment. So we can just go ahead right ahead and we go along.
Okay, great. Hopefully she'll be there in a minute. So the 5 skills. So the first one is we call it the futurist. No big surprise there that that while futurists, cannot predict the future as we wish that sometimes they could, they definitely have an eye towards what might be, as they say, coming down the pike. And one of the significant things about folks who really get used to living with a future orientation is that they don't just react, to trends and assume that that's the way it's going to be. They can look at multiple aspects and kind of try to proactively not just kind of adapt to the future, but also really try to shape the future and lead change. That the great remark, that the best way to see the future is to create it. And that there is this, these possibilities, run through various scenarios, looking and seeing a variety of potential outcomes, with a great respect for there are always things that we don't know that we don't know. The Michael Kaspar, in one of these 140 interviews he did, who was the CEO of World Fuel Services, which I've never heard of. But he said, for leaders of the future, it's not about picking a single path and sticking to it. It's about exploring many paths at the same time, which actually made me remember, CJ's, entertaining multiple hypotheses and testing them. Mm-hmm. That seeing around many corners to understand the best way forward, that's the skill of the future, of the futurist, considering various possibilities, being open to change, and looking towards the future, not getting caught in only responding to the things in the present, as important as they are. So that was his first skill. The second was what he called Yoda. He said, just like everyone's favorite green Jedi, that leaders of the future must develop emotional intelligence, including empathy and self-awareness, that we'll get to a little bit deeper here at the end. But this idea of being self-aware, as well as being able to influence, manage, often they say regulate, oneself, and actually be empathetic towards oneself, as well as then the ability to do that with others. It's really essential. And for a long time, this was sort of like looked down upon by leaders. They were expected to sort of be tough and treat themselves even with a bit of toughness, just focusing on results. But it turns out that emotional intelligence and the ability to create adequately safe situations unleashes much greater creativity, much greater co-creating, much greater transparency, and even honesty regarding feedback. Empathy is really simply the ability to see things from somebody else's perspective. And while we may never be able to do that completely, that it means this ability to really try to consider situations and realities and outcomes and gains and losses and wishes and hopes from an employees or customers or investors or whomever it might be, from the point of view of the other, is being able to listen actively and reflect back to somebody what it is they're saying, so that they can see either you've gotten it or they can give you some correction in order to make sure that you get it. Goes a long way these days towards creating the kind of mutuality of respect, as well as collaboration that's being required now, given the pace of change. So interestingly enough, most people who, they say most people leave their jobs because of their managers. And the fascinating thing is, again, here in terms of self-assessments, that people in leadership roles and managers tend to evaluate themselves pretty highly with regard to self-awareness. often those around them rate them fairly low with regard to thinking about whether or not that person is really aware about how they're coming across and what they're generating in the culture and the environment. And in fact, it is often where the biggest disparity lies, is between a person's sense of themselves and the extent to which they really are self-aware and the extent to which those around them would disagree. So this whole focus on emotional intelligence, conversational intelligence, and being able to listen well, and really seek to be exercising the ability to understand things from other people's perspective is a much bigger deal than has previously been and it's been given credit for. Next, he says, is this idea of the translator. It's all about communication and building bridges between people, that being able to not only just share a persuasive message clearly and concisely, but being able to carry messages and really understand messages between folks who are culturally different. And whether that's culturally different in that they represent, say, the perspective of an investor versus a customer, or versus a board, or versus a shareholder, or versus leadership, or versus employees, that the ability to translate perspectives a little bit, if you imagine you're sort of organizing the European Union, and it would help to speak English, French, German, Portuguese, it would help. Spanish, if you can speak the different languages, you're able to not only listen, but also, and hear, but also be able to speak with folks from different cultures. So I think that that's a wonderful skill to focus on. And it's interesting to me that he called it translator. The next is the coach. And, this ability to see, we really probably ought to throw away words like supervisor. We may wish to, keep manager there, but frankly, at least in the worlds that I'm in, there's a lot of really effective coaching going on. And as I mentioned earlier, this concept of kind of leadership and management as a learning partner, where we're together, we're seeing what's going on, we're figuring out how we're going to address it. We're assigning these roles, and people are responsible for integrity and following through and what they say they're going to do, and being transparent regarding whatever happened, so we can all learn from it and do better going forward. This ability to coach that process, really to facilitate and support it, as opposed to thinking that we're here just to tell people what to do, is definitely I think it's been going on for a long time. It's been the truth, but it is especially true for the future. Next, and this is the last of his top 5, is what he calls the technology teenager. He says, we don't necessarily need to be expert coders or programmers, but we do need to get a strong understanding. Leaders do need to get, given the significance of technology changing so much about our worlds and our organizations, and our abilities to relate and get things done and collaborate, co-create with each other, that just diving in and it's not that we will always, there's no need to understand necessarily precisely how it all works, but the ability to see the possibilities in it and learn about it in order to be able to make the most of it is incredibly important. At the very least, even keeping an eye on new developments and how they'll affect our businesses, create a technology-driven, forward-thinking company. And we just have to make sure that everybody's on board with that. So he asked this same question, how well are we practicing these skills? And interestingly enough, similar to the mindset question, only 8% of employees felt like their managers and senior executives are practicing these skills very well. So there's fairly low scores from on the assessments from the LinkedIn survey of 14,000 folks around the world. There's clear room for improvement, and so we'll stop there. That with the same kind of request and invitation to share and discuss whatever seems important. Comment on this, questions about this is actually about skills, and then add whatever we wish. And I see Laura has her hand up. Hi, Laura.
You're muted, Laura.
Okay, it may not be absolutely the right question at this time, but when I hear you talk about all of this, and I think about where most people are in society with regard to technology and the deep divide between those who have and those who haven't, and when you talk about being at this stage with technology, isn't that going to create even a deeper chasm between the people who don't have it and don't know how to work with it? And that I'm going to make that pool of people who not only don't have technology, but those who don't really know, even if they have a computer, really don't know more about technology, so that that chasm of people who don't know about how to use technology and what power it is go even deeper. And how are we going to fix all that?
I think that's a great question,
And how
Laura,
do you
and I
create
think you're right.
leaders to make that happen?
Yeah,
Because
I think you know, I think that I think that kind of acknowledging this reality that we do have a technology divide, certainly in this country, and I think across the world, is a huge challenge and something that we need to keep addressing as best as we can. His orientation here was with regard to folks in leadership positions not resisting the impact of technology as the world is changing, and so to not kind of, you know, think of themselves as, well, they don't need to learn it, that there's other people who will do it all for them, and to kind of cross that bridge and move to, okay, you know, it can be, you know, it certainly has threats, and it can be our friend, and we need to embrace it because it is unavoidable. And but you know, addressing the great divide with regard to technology is a huge and a really essential imperative. Who else?
If I can make maybe a quick comment about that, the technology aspect of it, I really do think it's important that you just understand the technology itself. And you don't necessarily have to be an end user all the time, but you do need to understand what's coming down the pike and what the differences are and how it's going to impact your business, because there's so many waves and so many changes in technology that you really do need to know as a manager when to take a risk or when to integrate a new piece of software, or even, it doesn't even necessarily need to be software, it could be anything. When you need to make a change and when you don't. It's just a way of being cost conscious as well. So.
Yeah, there's really no place for resisting it anymore. You know, it's something that we not only need to, you know, kind of accept, but also appreciate and seek to use it for our advancement. So who else? There's this futurist orientation, and
I'd like to ask
is
about
that Lisa who was going to join it?
Oh, was she? Did Lisa raise her hand?
Nope, I don't
Well,
really know.
I haven't raised my hand, but
Hi, Lisa.
hi. But I had comments about the mindset, so I do have information on that. Not so much
Great.
on the skills. But I
Great.
think developing the relationships, that the question that Laura had, I believe that it was Laura, or about how there's, no, it was
Jody.
Jody, that was talking about the gap between the C-suite or management and the line staff, and how that sometimes, and you were speaking on that too, Jeff. And you talked about developing relationships and being straightforward. And that's what I see is the gap. There's too big of a gap between, and the relationships aren't established for whatever reason. Yeah.
Lisa, thank you for that. I want to tell you sort of a funny story. I've been actually looking for the moment where I could tell this story. So thank you for saying that. So I could, thank you for, as they say, for teeing that up. So there's a combination kind of restaurant and bookstore in Ann Arbor, Michigan. This, the middle of the university there, called Zingerman's. And Zingerman's is a wonderful place. If you ever find yourself in Ann Arbor, you might even look them up just to see their philosophy and how they present themselves. They're wonderful people. And I haven't been back there in at least 10, maybe even 15 years, but I'd heard about it for a long time, and I was doing some work there and got a chance to visit, and they were everything they promised. And about 15 years ago, they, at a time when there was inflation and kind of their everything they for food and everything else with regard to their costs to run the restaurant, they were known for having relatively low prices and relatively high portions, especially for all these hungry college kids. And they didn't want to raise their prices, and they provided really solid benefits to all of their employees. And they really weren't sure what was going to happen, how they could figure this out, So they brought all the employees together, and this was, these two founders and everybody from the front of the restaurant or from the back of the restaurant. And I think they even had, some long-term customers there, and they just brought them all in. Said, okay, here's our situation. Now, can we talk this over? And they went one by one around, and everybody shared their ideas, and it was okay, but the ideas, didn't really seem like they were going to help that much. And they were getting towards the end of the meeting, and one of the owners noticed that this guy who works in the back and washes the dishes had not yet spoken up. And so they said to him, hey, we haven't heard from you yet. And he says, well, I just wash the dishes. Really, what would I know? He said, no, really, we're looking for ideas from whomever, whatever you might be able to share. And he said, well, as you might guess, what I see, since I throw away, everything that, is left on the plates, we do seem to throw away a lot of French fries. And they said, well, that's because we give people such big portions. We're known for giving people big servings of French fries. He said, yeah, well, we throw a lot of them away. And they said, okay, well, how can we do this differently? And then people started talking about it for a while. They said, okay, what if, we gave people smaller servings of French fries to go with their sandwiches and everything else. They even had French fries on omelets, if I remember correctly. And we'll set up a kind of a French fry thing there, put it on the wall, and anybody who wants more French fries just has to come up, and we'll cook them hot, and they can have as many French fries as they want. And we'll see if that results in us serving more or fewer French fries. Not only did it become sort of an angle, that people like to go there because they knew they could get French fries, people ate fewer French fries. And the money they saved on cooking the French fries and the potatoes and all those things was a wonderful, offset, and enabled them to reduce those costs. And the owners tell that story every time they pull people together to get their best ideas, to show how important it is to get every single person's perspective from every vantage point throughout the entire team, because you really never know who might have the best idea, and you just don't, let nobody assume that whatever they have to contribute, no matter where they are, that it might not be important and useful. So thanks for letting me tell that story, Lisa.
Sure. I have another comment. You know how the 4 mindsets and the 5 skills, how 39, I believe, % of the management thinks they have those 4 mindsets, and 8% think they have those skills. Look at the stress involved that that comes from the C-suite or up above, that is placed on management, that then is placed on the line staff, and all that mindset and skills kind of go out the window when the stress gets involved. And you go to your, the mindset, and you're not thinking of other people. And that's what seems to be going on everywhere, is just to hurry and put band-aids on things, and the stress that's around our environments, right, which then all of the mindsets and skills go out the window. That's, anyways, that was my input when I understood that.
Right. As they say, when push comes to shove, right? That, that these things really require extra attention.
Right.
One of the folks that I'm doing leadership work with and doing some team coaching with is going through some major stresses in their organization. This is a fantastic organization, but they've got major problems. And the work we were doing with their leadership team, that they said we have got to be more vigilant to get everybody involved in figuring out how we're going to solve some of the problems we're facing here, because we don't really know what the answers are, and we're just responding to each problem as it comes up, in a sort of emergency reaction kind of way. And it does feel like we need to respond immediately, but nothing's getting fixed. It just gets handled in the moment. And so they're disciplining themselves to actually pull together the folks who are impacted and the folks who might be able to contribute. And it was so funny because we were talking to the CEO, the COO the other day, and he said, we get on the phone on Zoom. We just, I got to tell you this story. We were doing all this stuff and people brought it to me as a problem. And I said, no, let's solve it together. And somebody came up with an idea and everybody else said, oh yeah, let's do that. And he said, no, we're not going to just do that. We're going to talk about it. We're going to consider everybody's perspective. And it only took 15 minutes, but we came up with greater ideas and we decided to try it out. And everybody had something good to do and to contribute. And we were able to pull it off. And it only took 15 minutes. And that was his story of success regarding what had happened, in the 2 weeks since we'd seen him. And it was a wonderful thing.
Yes.
Anyway, there you go. Thank goodness for small victories. Hey, Laura.
So we actually have Jody first, then
Jody.
Laura.
Great.
No,
Jody and then Laura. Good.
No, I was supposed to go next.
I think you went once already, Laura. So I'm gonna let Jody go first.
Didn't she go?
Either way.
So
Okay.
Good.
I don't care if Laura goes first, but I will go.
I'll
Thank you,
find
Jody.
time, Jody.
So your point about Yoda, the emotional intelligence, I think is a key ingredient in a leadership, because if the leader is not tuned emotionally to the people that he's working with or for and what have you, it's a lost cause. Because I've seen many leaders, they're talking to themselves. They are not able to relate to the clients or to the people who are in the team. And that is so important, that how you relate to them at a personal level, intimate level, show some empathy, show some compassion. And to me, it defeats the purpose if you are a leader and you don't have that component in you. It's like, get off the turf then. don't worry about being a leader.
Well, I would even, I'd be interested to hear what you all would say. You know, personally, Jyoti, I would say that, you know, if somebody really is not able to pull that off, like it's just not within their ability in these times, then that person's either going to need to have a stern conversation with themselves, or it really should just move on. That the cost of what's inflicted on folks, especially in these times of great challenges and opportunities, but the cost in these times for folks who are not reasonably emotionally intelligent, and how that plays out inside of organizations and teams, and we can't really afford it. We can't just work our way around it. The impact is too great, and I mean, and actually, you know what I'm seeing, Jyoti, in a couple situations, is that companies are losing the people that they'd really like to keep, and they're keeping the people, the people who maybe have have less ability to move on, are the ones who are staying, and it's really quite a substantial, you know, the great resignation is happening by people who have the ability to move on, and so in a way, it's the people who are not resigning who could possibly be an additional challenge in the days to come. So if you want to keep your best people, you better learn how to be a better Yoda.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you.
Next, we have Laura.
Hey, Laura.
Okay, couple things. Now, of course, I've forgotten them, but anyway, I have to say that doing this, I thought, of course, I'm not in business or anything, but when my daughter was in school, I took over leadership of the carnival when I was there. Now, the carnival is a very big event at this school. It's a big fundraiser, very important. And it had been run the same way every year, and they made the same amount of money, which was always disappointing. And there were always a lot of fighting and infighting and so on. And I was new, so I took it over because I had done it at her school in Pittsburgh, and I was pretty successful. And so this is an international school, so of course everybody's country had to be represented in the foods that we prepared, because we had a lot of food at this thing, and that was cool. And that sort of, you know, everybody had their responsibility to do their food. So I just, how many tables do you want, and how much, you know, do you need to be near a plug, and so on. So that was okay organization. But then there were all these other kinds of booths and things that had to be worked on, and people volunteered to do them. So I had all my volunteers set up, but I wasn't going to do the carnival the same way. I was going to get other kinds of things for the kids to do, and come up with different kind of artists to do artwork, or, you know, fake tattoos, or, you know, just different kinds of stuff. And that already was a big, you know, to do. And, oh, she's going to change this and she's going to change that. And you know what, okay, so one by one, I would go to talk to these people about how they're doing, and they weren't doing anything, frankly, which really, you know, you don't have that much time, and you need to put a little energy into it. So in my leadership role, I did what I had to do. I took over the doing everything, because that was the only way I could see getting it done the way it had to be. So I'm a terrible leader because I have no patience, and I don't tolerate stupid people. So I took, and so the carnival went really well. Everything ran very nicely. We made a lot of money that summer, more than had ever been made. And so that's my leadership role, how I do leadership, and it's not a very good role. And I took it on the next year, and I did it the same way I'd done it the first year. So I guess everybody was happy because they knew nobody would have to do anything for it. But the third year, I didn't do it again because that would have been insanity. But my friend did it. And she spent the entire time calling on me to ask me what I had done, so that she replicated exactly the same one that I had done. So, you know, I think I could be a good leader if I had the right people, because I kind of know what to do. But when I don't have the right people, I become a tyrant. So there's nothing there about what happens when you don't have the, when you can't pull it off with your leadership, that you need to be. What do you do? When all else fails, do you go back to being the explorer and try a whole other way? Or do you just become a tyrant like I did? And there was one
Well,
little other thing, Jeff,
what-
about the empathy definition that you had in there, where you were talking about and develop, that they had to learn how to be empathetic. I think the way you were defining that skill there, it really sounded like, becoming sympathetic too, rather than empathetic. But that's just my feeling again about that stickler between those two words. And I will leave it.
We're going to get to that in a moment. That's the next
I'm
slide.
done. I'm done. See, I gave you another opening, so I.
There you go. Between you and Lisa, I'm being invited each step of the way. So, so Laura, what I want to offer you is this. So, it certainly is possible. I mean, not in particularly complex situations, but in relatively small situations, it is possible for one person to step in and do it all and tell everybody what to do. It certainly is possible. However, number one, it's not sustainable.
right.
That when that person then is no longer available to do it, they win the lottery or whatever, that the whole thing goes away. And so it's not really leadership. It's actually just doing it. And there's a difference. And the folks who sort of consider leadership in the longer term think of actually one of the primary responsibilities of folks who accept a leadership role is developing other people, is developing other leaders. It's not the only job, but it's a big one. And so the ability to take responsibility for that and not just for getting it done, as you say, sometimes maybe in a tyrant sort of way, even though it results in getting the initial thing done, it won't get done over and over. And because people get burned out, they'll quit. And then the second thing is that there's really none of us who is as smart as all of us. And so gaining the information and the knowledge and the experience and the network and everything from more people is almost always better. But then last is that when stuff goes wrong, and you really need everybody to join in, the kind of sole proprietor, leader is nowhere near as resilient. They just don't have as much to call on in terms of assets or cushion or support or reaching out to other folks. So, I get your point, that sometimes somebody's got to step in and get it done. But in the long run, it's not really successful leadership.
The one difficulty, though, is that being an international school, there were people from every country. And so bringing all these different mothers into this one environment, there were a lot of cultural things that we would have to make work. And translators, not only the way you were talking about, actual, translators.
Actual translators.
Actual translators. So there was that little bit of extra level of difficulty bringing us all together. But anyway, I just wanted to say I have had a leadership role where I just dropped it and did what I had to do. So I'm not very good at it, but I understand what has to be done. Anyway, I don't want to take up more time.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you. So Jeff, do you have another slide?
We do. We've got one more to go here. So, so this is the article that I also had posted there. This wonderful article that I saw written by Tracy Brower that was in Forbes there. That empathy is really taking on an even greater level of both meaning and priority and far from just kind of, well, you know, it's one of the soft skills. I mean, it kind of turns out that the soft skills are actually the hard skills. It has a great potential to drive substantial business results. And it's interesting to see the business case being made for this, as opposed to, you know, wouldn't it be nice? And, you know, everybody could just sort of be friendly to each other. So one here is just with regard to the effect of the stress that everybody's been going through, given all these kind of unanticipated things going on, that the ability to just keep getting the work done, keep cooperating with each other, not burn out. That the global study by Qualtrics found that 42% of people have experienced a decline in mental health. 67% of people are experiencing increases in stress, while 57% are experiencing increased anxiety, and 54% report that they're emotionally exhausted. 53% of people are sad. 50% of people report themselves as being more irritable. 28% say they're having trouble concentrating. 20% saying they're taking longer to finish tasks, and 15% are having trouble thinking, and 12% are challenged to just simply juggle their responsibilities. Good Lord, you know, that's a lot of stress. And so part of the role of leaders to actually be empathetic and put themselves in other people's situations and being able to relate to them in a way that exhibits really not sympathy, which is really sort of akin to pity, but really seeking to understand and care about somebody else's situation. And it's not even with an orientation that immediately you're going to be able to fix it, but the ability to simply connect more. And the extent to which work and organizations used to be, in many more of them, just work. You know, like you kind of got your work life and that's it. You go, and it's almost inappropriate for anybody to share things outside of their work life except at the sort of minimal or contained level. But that's really changing a great deal. And people are bringing kind of their whole selves and their whole lives to interact with each other, which was only, you know, increased by all these meetings where we're looking at each other in all of our homes, and just, you know, and our children and our pets and our significant others and whatever, you know, that we are kind of almost by the experience of connecting to each other, connecting in ways that were beyond what we were doing before. And then that everybody's going through so much stress on top of that is really part of this. But those numbers are just really remarkable. With regard to people's personal lives, the study in the occupational health science found that our sleep is compromised when we feel stressed at work, that it's keeping people up. And that they said that when employees find themselves on the other end of rude emails at work, they tend to experience negativity and spill over into their personal lives, particularly with their partners. And even, you know, sort of they feel less capable in their parenting roles. And then in terms of just performance and turnover and customer experience, that when people are on the receiving end of rudeness at work, that their performance suffers and they're less likely to help others, including customers. So, you know, this sort of major study by Georgetown University found that workplace incivility was rising, and with extensive effects, including, you know, reduced collaboration and increased turnover, where people were leaving just because they, you know, were experiencing that stress in their relationship with their coworkers. So the flip side of this is that what has come to be understood as empathy, which is really seeking authentically to see situations from somebody else's perspective, and let that person know that that you care about understanding what's going on with them. That it's actually a study of 889 employees by a research firm called Catalyst, found that empathy has significant constructive results with regard to innovation. That when people report that their leaders are being empathetic with them, that that 61% said that they found that they had been more innovative and with others, as opposed to only 13% of employees with less empathetic leaders. That in terms of engagement, there's 76% of people who experienced empathy from their leaders reported they were engaged, compared to 32% who had experienced less empathy. In terms of retention, that 62% of women of color, 57% of white women said they were unlikely to think of leaving their companies when they felt that their life circumstances were respected and valued by their companies. Inclusivity, that 50% of people with empathetic leaders reported their workplace was inclusive, compared to only 17% who felt that their leadership was less empathetic. And last year, that with regard to the whole work-life experience, felt that when their leaders were more empathetic, that 86% reported they were more able to navigate the demands of their work and life, successfully juggling their personal, family, and work obligations, compared to 60% of those who perceived less empathy. So this, cooperation matters here, and that that when empathy is introduced into decision making, and there's feedback and there's input and there's consideration of the impact it'll have on the folks involved who will have to do something or have to deal with the decision, that it makes a huge difference. So leading with empathy involves two things. These aren't the only things, but at least two things. That there's sort of what referred to a little bit as what they refer to as cognitive empathy, which is, if I were in that person's position, what might I be thinking right now? And asking them sort of what they're feeling and what's going on with them in a way that makes them feel like, they could actually tell me is one major thing. But they also said that leaders don't have to be, experts in mental health in order to demonstrate that they care or are paying attention. That it's enough actually just to check in and ask questions and, take cues from people regarding how much they want to share. But just it's the reaching out, and the consistently doing that as part of a habit influences a culture. And I can tell you that in work that I was doing with a group of sort of emerging leaders in a very challenging situation here in New York, they were working for organizations that were set up to help young people make it through high school, especially during the pandemic. And they were experiencing all kinds of stress at home and with the technology and trying to complete their high school requirements. It was, and within these 20 or so folks that I was working with in this kind of leadership and coaching program, 3 of them were living in multi-generation families and had a member of their family die from COVID-19 infections. And, we really got to the point that we started off every gathering, which was kind of like every other week, for like a morning or an afternoon, with just checking in, how are you feeling? What's going on? And we spent a great deal of time doing that. And it was a program that was to include significant, input and training and leadership and creative problem solving and managing people. we easily spent an hour of those 3 hours, each one of those times, just checking in with people in order to help them feel appreciated and cared about and understood. And it was a remarkable change, and they started doing that with the teams of people that they were leading. So these are those times, you know, when this matters more. And it probably always mattered, but it especially matters now. So it has become an essential leadership competency. And for folks who can't find it within themselves to either learn that or do it, then they really they can't serve. We can't allow them to serve in responsible leadership positions because the cost is too great. Okay, so our last conversation here. Let's see, what do we have? We have about 8 minutes, Joe, something like that.
That's about right. Yeah. So we have about 8 minutes before
Great.
we have to wrap up here. So
Good.
looks like
Anybody have comments or questions or how you think about this?
looks like Laura has one.
Hey, Laura.
You have to mute.
There was
There
a,
you go.
recently I saw this young man being interviewed, a young Black man from New York, and he was talking about the fact that we all talk about these instances when people are murdered or this or that, and everybody's full of talk, but we're never there to listen. And he said, unless we start to listen and hear the voices of the people that we're trying, we're never gonna do anything. And I thought that was, it was so profound because, you can't say what the Black person needs. You can't go and say, I'm going to do this for you and I'm going to do that for you and expect to hit the right target. You really have to go and listen. And we haven't really done that very much in real terms. I mean, the Democrats, for example, never go and really listen. We tell you what you're going to need. We're going to tell you how we're going to get you out of poverty. But, you gotta hear what the people are saying, what they want, and we don't do that. So I
Jeff?
think,
Thanks, great.
Do you have any comments?
Others
Jeff?
like to join in as well in this last few minutes?
how can we create something that's nonprofit, that we can develop a leadership program that would really do something to help people and to get some real progress to occur? Can you help us do that some way, Jeff?
Well,
Well,
he's
that's what I
starting with
did for
this.
3 decades.
and he's starting with this. This is his start. This is our beginning.
This is my current nonprofit program.
I got to tell you, the numbers are pretty staggering when you see the mental health numbers coming out of COVID. And I think that that there's going to be this great resignation, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I don't know what you could do to actually change some of those numbers, actually, off the top of my head, without knowing particular situations, because I think a lot of it just has to do with remote work. I think, to be quite honest, either people are demanding it or they're not, and I think that there's a divide. I really do.
Yeah. And I think it's going to take a little while. This is not, we're at the front end of all of that. I think personally, I don't think until, the spring of 2022, are we actually going to begin coming out of this in a major way. I think we have huge challenges ahead of us here, and a lot of things that are going to be reinvented and tried, and we'll see what happens. Rome was not healed in a day. Hey, Laura. Oh, Laura, we can't hear you.
Teachers elementary school, and they were all given tablets, and the kids, like their older siblings would take them and break them, or the younger sibling would take them and break them as soon as they got home. You know, so it, there's so much other culture that we have to change, you know, within the home, it's really going to be tough to get things going.
So
Yeah.
we're gonna let Jody get her last question in, and then we're gonna close things out.
Great. Yep. Hey, Jody.
I don't have a question, but I have to say something to you, Jeff. You did an excellent job in your presentation.
Thank
Very
you.
well done. It was like I said to that lady this morning when I was having lunch with her. I said, even you should join. It doesn't matter. Everybody needs to be a leader here, because if we all give up, and then society will go haywire. And if we all have this training in leadership, we can help the leader. The leadership training is not only for the leaders, but also for our common ordinary people like us, so that we can help the leader. So you did a great job.
Oh, thank you, Jody. And there's, of course, there's no ordinary people here. So, but
Kevin, would you
so
like to
much.
make a quick
I
comment?
think you inspired us to become leaders, Jeff. You inspired
Absolutely.
Hey,
me to
Kevin.
be a leader.
Yes, I'm sorry. Just real quick. I was working for this guy for 15 years, and I just left him in September. And among a few other reasons, nothing wrong with the guy, decent boss, but that was it. Like you said, you know, he wasn't a good leader. He was just a boss, and that's one of the things that I'm learning his job being a boss, and at the same time, I'm definitely not a leader, but I would like, what I have right now is a partner. And we've known each other for 20 years almost. And everything we do is half. We try to do everything half so we can both get paid half. Even though sometimes I think he does more, I tell him take more. But I feel that it's the hardest part of being a leader is having that equality mindset. Because the way I see it is like, I don't think I could be a leader, because I would tell everybody, okay, you know, if you do a quarter of the job in 4 people, we all get quarters. But then again, this is very, very a long talk, but that was just one of the reasons why I left.
Kevin, I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. You know, even that reflection, Kevin, is one of the essential things to both becoming and being a leader. The ability to pause and reflect, and you know, and share with other people candidly but cordially, you know, and listen and learn. It's just a huge part of being able to do it. So so keep moving forward. You do great.
Thank you.
With that, that's a wonderful way to end it. And thank you,
Yes.
Jeff, for another wonderful session. This has been fantastic. I'm really enjoying this series. I really am. I really do think it's one of the best series we have going.
Well, thanks for your help today, Joe, in helping me structure it. It was
no problem at all.
You can see that I did exactly what you recommended.
It worked. I liked it. I like this type of structure. I really do. I thought
This is very well done. Yes.
Yeah.
I only come because of you, Jeff. I mean, I have no leadership needs because I don't do anything, but I just like coming because it's so interesting.
So what do we have
Thank
next
you.
time,
Thanks for coming.
Jeff? What will we be covering for us now? Everyone, I know that 2 weeks from now it's Thanksgiving. So I
It's
obviously,
Thanksgiving.
yeah. So will it be
We're
3
probably
weeks?
not going to do that, right?
No,
No,
no.
we're not having a Thanksgiving performance and like a little parade and everything. I thought
We
You
could have
lead
the
us.
Thanksgiving
You lead
leader-
us.
The Thanksgiving. We could have the
Aren't you-
Thanksgiving
aren't you-
leadership parade.
Aren't you
Yeah.
my family and leadership family, and we all meet together? And say, oh,
You
gosh.
know, it would be fun. Maybe we could even make a float or some big one of those floating air things.
Yeah, and the head of the, like, like in the one with on the Titanic, and you can put the head, like the leader at the top, and you know, he can be singing and stuff. And yeah, I think it'll
We're
be
flying in the air, right?
Mhm.
Thank you again, Jeff.
you.
You have a good one.
Thanks
All
for
right,
joining
so I
us.
What
think
is-
it'll be
Take care.
probably scheduled, keep an eye out for the calendar. I believe it'll be 3
figure
weeks
it out.
out. Yeah, so
Okay.
3 weeks,
3
Oh,
weeks
okay.
out.
no.
We'll look forward to that.
Yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right, take care.
All right.
Good night. Good
Bye.
night.
Take care,
Night, Edith.
everyone.
Jeff,
Good
I
night,
need
everyone.
you for 1 second. Stay on, okay? Oops.
Right.
I need to ask you a quick question,
Right.
Jeff.
Sure.
I'm gonna then I'll make you a co-host and then I'll leave.
Okay,
Okay, thanks, Joe.
I'll just be 1 second.
Sure.
Okay, here's the story.
Uh-huh.
Marit and I were talking. Since I have a